Welcome again to this second video in our series talking about asana, or the movement portion of yoga. So in the first video we talked briefly about the definition of asana and also a little bit of how asana fits into the broader yogic system, the Ashtanga yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga described by Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras. Now this week we're going to go a little bit more in depth and look at what actually is asana and what does asana consist of when we actually practice. So what we can definitely say, and what most of us will already know, is that asana is on one level about movement of the body. So there are many different postures that involve forward bends or twists or side movements, or postures which we undertake when we're lying on our stomachs, which are known as prone postures, postures that we undertake lying on our back, which are known as supine postures, and there are seated postures with the legs extended, and so on and so forth. There are also inversions where we're standing on our heads in headstands, or on our shoulders in shoulder stands, on our hands in handstands. So there are many different forms of posture that we undertake. And essentially, when we practice asana, there are various ways in which we can practice them. The two main ways in the Krishnamacharya system are dynamically and static. Dynamically means that we move in and out of a posture according to a prescribed methodology of movement, which is known as a vinyasa, which simply means to place intelligently the movements in one order after another. So that means, for example, if we want to come into a forward bend, we would raise our arms first, and then once we've raised our arms, then we would fold down into the posture. Then to come out, we would raise our arms again and lift the torso, and then finally bring the arms down. So that's, for example, the way of moving in a dynamic sequence, where we would come in and out of the posture a number of times, and then we would complete that part of our practice. The static part of the practice would be to do the same thing, but to come into the posture and then remain in that posture for a period of time. The period of time can be based on many different things, and that is not the focus of our video today, but just to understand that there are these two main ways: dynamic, moving in and out a number of times, and then static, where we actually hold the posture and remain there steadily for a period of time. So that is very briefly the movement portion. But the thing is that in and of itself, if that's how we left the definition of asana, that would not be asana. In fact, what makes it unique to yoga and what takes it out of the realm of exercise is two other very important factors. One is the breath, and the other one is the mind. So starting with breath, what is important and what makes an asana is that when we move, we breathe in accordance with that movement. So in the example that I just gave, where we raise our arms and then fold down in order to get into a forward bend, we would accompany the raising of the arms with an inhalation, and then we would accompany the folding down with an exhalation. Similarly, when we come back up, we would inhale and raise the arms and the torso, and then when we bring the arms down, we exhale. So it's important to understand that there is either an in-breath, a pause, an out-breath, or a pause, to accompany each and every movement. If we're not breathing steadily and smoothly alongside each movement, and we're just covering this very simply today, there is a huge amount more detail that we can give. If we're not doing that as a basic part of our practice, then it could be argued that we are not actually practicing asana. This is certainly the case according to Sri Krishnamacharya. So breath is absolutely a fundamental, if not the underpinning aspect of asana. That is also including, though, the other part we mentioned, number 2, which is the mind. So what's also important in asana is that we're not just kind of waving our body around in an unconscious manner. What we are doing is we are moving in a prescribed methodological manner, we are breathing in unison with that movement, and the mind is fully absorbed, fully concentrated, fully engaged in both the sensations and movements of the body and the flow, movement, and sensations of the breath. It is only when we have those three things united together in union, which is another definition of, for example, yoga, the yoking or the union or the coming together of those three factors, that triangle of techniques and methodologies that we're practicing, that we can truly say that we are practicing asana. And the reason that this is important in the Krishnamacharya system is because each one of those things is a skill or is something that needs to be developed in order to support the development or evolution of our practice over the long term. And again, we're going to come on to talk about that in another video. In addition to uniting the breath, the movement, body, and the mind, there is also something else that is fundamental in relation to the way that we practice asana. I've actually covered this a little bit in a previous video, but it's so important I'm going to mention it here again as part of this series of videos. And that is what Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras refers to as sthira and sukham. He basically tells us that the essential ingredients or the essential qualities of asana are that they must feel stable, which is the sthira, and that at the same time there must be ease or comfort in the experience, which is the sukham. If there's too much stability, there's too much tension, too much effort. The breath goes out of sync, our mind gets disturbed. If there's too much comfort, then arguably we might start to get drowsy or sleepy, our concentration starts to slip, and we're not truly present in the moment. So he basically tells us that the practice of asana is bringing these two qualities fully and completely into every aspect of our practice. One of the reasons that I often say this is so important, particularly in the modern day, is because it's so easy to lose sight of the ease and the comfort aspect of our practice. Particularly with the more intense forms of asana physical practice, we can become so goal-orientated towards the form of an asana. We can become so goal-orientated to actually trying to stay in an asana for a long period of time that we very much lose or negate this ability to feel comfort and ease as we're practicing alongside the stability. And actually, that said, the stability also gets compromised, because if we're pushing ourselves too hard, we may notice again that our breath becomes short, that we start to shake, that we're not able to be stable and still in the posture when we're practicing in that way. And another important reason for this to really be at the forefront of our understanding in relation to asana is that ultimately, as we've said previously, yoga is our attempt through a pathway to bring our mind to a state of equanimity and peace. And we have to ask ourselves the question that if we are practicing in a way that creates more tension and more instability as a pattern in our bodies, in our breath, and in our minds, whether that is actually taking us in the direction of that equanimity, of that peace, that stability, and also finally that liberation from suffering. So in summary, asana is the bringing together of prescribed steady movement with a breath pattern that works in unison with all of the movements, whilst at the same time the mind remains fully and completely focused on what we're doing in that moment. And we practice all of these with the qualities of sthira, stability, and sukham, ease and comfort. Please reflect on this, take it into your practice, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next part of our series. Namaste.